Roots are very important. Roots in the Jewish community are something that are very special. And I don't have roots here. I have roots in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, at Temple Israel, where my grandfather was the rabbi for 3 decades, where my father and uncles had their B'nai Mitzvah, where my brother and I had our B'nai Mitzvah, where my brother was married. My brother and I, we would wait on Saturday mornings and put our ears by our parents' bedroom door at about 9 o'clock in the morning. And if there was movement, it meant that we were going to shul. And we were very disappointed. And if it was quiet, we knew we weren't going, then we could go back to watching TV or doing whatever it is that we used to do. We were very little. And the conservative service that we went to was very long. And so we were happy to miss it. It was not the most spiritual period of my life. But I remember, I have these memories of going to shul every week. When I got to my first job in Charlotte, North Carolina, I remember walking in for one of the very first board meetings when I was there. And I walked in the social hall where we had the meeting at the same time as 2 other people. One was a young high school student who was the president of the Temple Youth Group, and the other was an older man who had been named the lifetime president of the Temple and had been the past president of the Temple maybe 2 decades earlier. And as we walked in, the 3 of us together, he said to her, to this young high school student, you know, how's your family doing? How's your dad? How's everything going? And right then and there, and this is a memory that's still clear to me to this day, right then and there I knew this was not my community. Nobody here is going to ask me about my family. Nobody here knows my family or really cares about where I came from. And ever since then, that was in 2002, ever since then I've been chasing community, trying to find roots. And I've been to a few different places. This is my 3rd stop professionally, and here too I have no roots, I have no history. There was an article in the most recent commentary you may have read, an excellent, well-written article written by me, talking about how when my daughter has her bat mitzvah next week, my only prayer is that she'll look out and feel like this is home, that we do belong here. But she, for the most part, has grown up here, whereas I grew up in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. And the names that I know and the faces that I see and the emotion that I have for a sanctuary aren't in this room like so many of you. But I know how you feel. I've only been back a couple of times to Pennsylvania. I don't go very often to the synagogue that I grew up in. I've only been there maybe 3 or 4 times in the last 20 years. But the last time I was there, I noticed some things were different. They took out a lot of the seats, because the synagogue, when my grandfather was there, was about 900 families. And now it's less than 200. And they don't need as many seats in this grand sanctuary that they used to have. And my first feeling was, how could they do that? They made it different than it was when my grandfather was here. And the truth is, the sanctuary that was built for when my grandfather was there doesn't meet their needs. But I went up and I stood on the bima, and I stood behind the same podium where my grandfather used to stand. I remember these huge boxes of Luden's cough drops that he used to keep underneath, and I would always come and try and eat them. He would invite me up usually at the end of the service for the last couple songs of Musaf to sit next to him. I don't have any emotion in this room other than watching my children in a few Temple Beth Am Day School plays. And I know that it doesn't really matter as a Jew halachically. When I say halachically, I mean in its very literal book form sense. Whether we pray in this room or that room or down the street. In terms of Jewish legality, it makes no difference. We can pray anywhere where we can put a critical mass of Jews together for that purpose. Legally, it doesn't matter. But emotionally, that's something totally different. I know what it's like to have that emotion because I have that emotion for a place that's not this. But your prayer is, you hope, as a Jew, that every Jew should have a place where they grew up and that they have ties. I want to tell you about something very interesting because what we're really talking about here is not just our past, but how we as Jews link together one generation to the next. What is our commitment as Jews and members of Temple Beth Am today to all those who have come before us, and equally to all those Jews who will come after us in this holy place? In the Torah portion of Shalach Lecha, which was actually my Bar Mitzvah Torah portion, we'll get to in a few weeks when we make our way into the book of Numbers. The Jewish people commit a terrible sin. Even worse than the sin of the golden calf, they commit what's called the Chet HaMeraglim, the sin of the spies, in which 12 spies, one from each tribe, go into the land of Israel, come back, and report to Moses and the Jewish people, 10 of the 12, we cannot conquer the people who are living there, and we don't think that it's worthwhile for us Jews to go into the land of Israel. To which God responds, if that's the way you think, if you don't have faith that we can move forward and go into the land of Israel, then you won't go forward into the land of Israel. And you will wander for the next 40 years and die out in the wilderness. And only the next generation will go into the land of Israel. So that's the scenario, and it's a devastating piece of information that we learn each year when we read the Torah portion in Shalach Lecha. But what happens after that is mysterious. It's unusual. And it puzzles the rabbis. What happens? Immediately after the Jewish people are told that they're not going into the land of Israel, the Torah says, Ki tavo'u be'eretz Yisrael. When you enter into the land of Israel, here are some mitzvahs that you'll have to follow. Think about the logic. You're not going into the land of Israel. Oh, but when you do these mitzvahs. So the rabbis say, why in the world would the Torah follow up this harsh decree that you're not going into the land of Israel with a couple of mitzvahs that you can only do when you get to the land of Israel? There are a variety of rabbis who comment on this, but one of the most interesting is the Or Chaim HaKadosh. The Or Chaim, who lived in the 13th century from Morocco, eventually made his way to Israel. In fact, if you've ever been in the Jewish quarter of Jerusalem, you may have walked past the synagogue that he founded there, which is still there, in the Jewish quarter. And the Or Chaim said this. He said, why did God tell the Jewish people that these are mitzvahs you should do when you get to the land of Israel, when you're not going to get there? Because what he was really saying is, you're not going to get there, but your children will. You're not ever going to be there, but because your children are going to be there, that is the same thing as you being there. It's the reiteration of what the Jewish people said at Mount Sinai. When God said to the Jewish people, do you accept this Torah? They said, not only do we accept this Torah for ourselves, but we accept this for all the Jews who aren't able to be here. Not just the ones who are going to come into the future, but the ones who came before us as well. And so what the Or Chaim HaKadosh teaches us, and what the Torah is trying to explain to us, is that when something happens to one of our generations, it happens to all of our generations. So I think, when we think about this connection between us and the Jews who came before us, and us and the Jews who are coming after us, we are here tonight based on the emotion, the love, and the connection that we've had to ourselves, our families, our own selves, and to all those Jews who have come before us in this place for a long, long time. Some of the vignettes that we heard from the past presidents occurred, I don't want to tell you what I was doing during some of those periods. Basically, I was waiting outside my parents' door, hoping that I didn't have to go to shul that Shabbos. That's our connection to the people who've come before us. But if we want to truly grow, if we want to fulfill the visions that Rabbi Baumgard, Alav Shalom, used to have for this congregation, if we want to live up to the emotion and the experience of the congregants who filled the rosters of this place, who built all of these incredible buildings that we now enjoy, then not only do we connect to the emotion of the past, but this is the key. We bring their spirit with us going into the future. And so God told the Jewish people in the land of Israel, first something harsh. You will not go into the land of Israel. But then he brought them what our tradition calls nechama. He brought them comfort by saying, though you will only go so far, when your children go forward, that means you're going forward too. Tonight, let us encapsulate the spirit of what was, from the very beginning days of Temple Beth Am, what has always been, to make us today the fastest growing Reformed congregation in the entire country. Let us gather in all of that spirit, all of that emotion, all of that history, all of those life cycle events that were with us at every single milestone and turn of our life. And let us bequeath that to all those who are coming after us, so that in our vision, they may also produce vision. May this be God's will. Amen.